Hello, everyone. Welcome to Seattle Rotary. I'm Cindy Runger, president of this club, and it's so nice to see so many people here. And also, fun to see people we haven't seen in a while. I see Geraldine Brousseau's made it back, and so also, yes. And Angie Holstrom just had her baby, and she's back as well for a little bit, so nice to see you. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with Rotary, we're a service organization, and there are about 1.2 million of us around the world dedicated to leadership and service. And Seattle Rotary is one of the largest Rotary clubs in the world. And this is one place where you can just come as a member or a guest, because we have great speakers, great service opportunities, and also just a great network of people. And so speaking of great speakers, our main program today is Steve Griessel from the Betz Family Winery to give us insights into the Washington wine industry. Now for our inspiration is David Brenner.
Thank you. Thank you, President Cindy. The writer of Psalm 139 in the Hebrew Bible says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." For our inspiration, I'd like to share with you in the next 2 minutes the quite wonderful biochemical process that occurs when we are inspired. First, we need a jolt of inspiration. Remember this photo from the story of President Cindy back in July? It flashed across the screen that day without much comment then, but it sure caught my attention, and I'll bet it did yours too. It turns out our club president not only danced with the stars, advised a governor, and remade herself as a wealth manager, but she's also a black belt kickboxer. Wow, I thought, I'm even more impressed. And I'll bet you thought that too. So let's call this inspiration the Kickbox Woman. It's not just President Cindy. Our club is full of kickbox women. Women with life stories which cause us to say, I didn't know that, and inspire us to do more ourselves. Take past President Kathy. She climbs the highest mountains in the world. Take Laurel James. She's a pioneer in running gear and also just about the friendliest person in the world. Take incoming President Kim. She does everything, capably, without drama. She just gets it done. And just like so many of our speakers, too, for instance, the female military officers from our club and from actively serving now, who you saw last week. Kickbox women all. Now for the neuroscience part. For this, I'm drawing on the research of Dr. Paul Zak, who measures blood chemistry and nerve activity of people while they're listening to inspiring stories. Here is what is happening to you physiologically right now while you consider these stories of our club's kickbox women. To get your attention, when you saw President Cindy's picture, your body released a fast-acting substance abbreviated as ACTH. Next, with your attention engaged as you began to consider the story behind the photo, how did this come about? The hypothalamus gland deep in your brain started to manufacture oxytocin. As your brain received the oxytocin, a large cranial nerve called the vagus nerve carried signals to your heart and to your gut to release more oxytocin directly into your bloodstream, flooding you with good feeling. That's where you are right now. Here's the especially wonderful part. This chemical activity is part of what causes us to want to help others. As Dr. Zak explains, once we are attentive and emotionally engaged, our brains go into mimic mode and mirror the behaviors that the characters in the story are doing or might do. Effective stories motivate us to help others. So ultimately, that's why we show up weekly to hear inspiring stories from our speakers and each other. They inspire us to serve, and that is your brain on inspiration.
And so now to introduce our main speaker is past President Bill Weisfeld. And for those of you who do not know Bill yet, I encourage you to get to know him. He's played a significant role in the development of our region. He is past president of this club 20 years ago. He's a graduate from the UW and UW Law School, served in the Air Force JAG Corps, a Vietnam War veteran, and was president of 12 companies, 6 public and 6 private, mostly turnarounds. And he's currently principal with Elliott Bay Asset Solutions, active in YPO, and serves on the board of directors for the Downtown Seattle Association, and And he still finds time to make quality time to act as a thoughtful sounding board to many of us. So please welcome Bill.
Thank you, Cindy. It is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker today, my good friend Steve Griessel. The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as someone who organizes and operates a business or businesses taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. Steve is the ultimate entrepreneur. After starting several businesses from scratch at age 25, Steve created the largest tourism company in South Africa with 2,700 employees. He was honored by the government for his entrepreneurial skills, but he was worried about the political and business climate in South Africa, and Steve and his wife Bridget gave it all up to move to the United States. They left everything behind because you have to. They moved to the United States, and it's our good fortune that they found their way to Woodinville, where Steve and his wife Bridget purchased the Betz Winery. Steve is now totally immersed in the Washington wine business and has risen to the position of vice chairman of the Washington Wine Commission. At Betz, they make some of the world's best wines, always rated in the mid-90s. My favorite is rated 98, and it's called Heart of the Hills. Steve is going to speak to us about the Washington wine industry and why it matters. Let's give Steve a big Rotary welcome. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please excuse my accent. I am an American. I do speak funny. I often joke that I'm from the deep south, and I really am. But I do speak English, and most of you speak American, and they are a distant form of each other, so I do apologize. If you get confused, just go and ask Paul. He can tell you what I've said. It's wonderful to be here, and I want to give you a sense of why the Washington wine industry is such an incredible industry and part of the fabric of all of us who are sitting in this room today. In 1997, when we started our winery, we had nothing to do with it. We were the number 68th winery in the state. In 2009, there were 620 wineries in the state. In 2017, there were 940 wineries in the state. So we just about hit 1,000 wineries in Washington state. In 2000, we harvested 30,000 tons of grapes. Last year, we harvested 230,000 tons of grapes. Our economic impact is now $4.8 billion, which puts us just behind apples as the second largest economic contributor in the ag sector. And they had about 7.1 or 7.2 billion, which means that we got a good chance at just the growth that you can see that I'm trying to give you of overtaking apples as the number one ag product in our state. So that's very exciting to us and something that we're very proud of as an industry. I guess if I asked you what is the number one grape that we grow, believe it or not, it's now Cabernet Sauvignon. It's overtaken all the others. We only started growing it not long ago, and it's accelerating at a much faster pace. Secondly is Chardonnay. Third is Riesling, but Riesling is pretty static, and that's where we started. People thought the only thing we could grow in this cold, wet climate, okay, of course that's not the case, is Riesling. And the fourth one is Syrah. So we're at about 64% reds now, and the balance is white wines. So that's continually changing as more and more red wines get made. I also want to tell you about why. So what's the other factor? I mean, we have a perfect climate for growing wine, and people just didn't understand that until really the 80s. We only get 8 inches of rain a year in eastern Washington. It's a continental desert. When I tell that to people from Napa Valley, they scratch their heads. When I tell that from people on this side of the mountain that haven't been to eastern Washington, they can't believe me, right? Because we get 35 to 40 inches of rain a year here. We have low humidity, 16 and a half hours of sunshine, over 300 sunshine days a year, low disease pressure because of the combination of all those things. One of the only regions in the world that are still own-rooted, because we have not had phylloxera in Washington state. We're the same latitude as the French wine growing regions. So we're not we're not too far north. And this continental climate is what really separates us. It gives us the character of this wine, these really hot days, and then the temperature plummets by about 40 degrees at night. So we get this big, what we call diurnal shift, and that's what creates this beautiful freshness and ripeness. And we're able to grow things like Cabernet, which need a lot of heat. 2 of the months of the year in eastern Washington are hotter than Napa Valley, both July and August. Once again, every time I tell people from Napa Valley, they just say, that's impossible. I say, well, guys, go and check the facts. I mean, it's just simply the truth. We do have a shorter growing season because they have a lot, their vines wake up earlier and go to sleep later, but it's very important. But what sets us apart? I mean, we've got these perfect conditions. We've really understood what's going on. I believe it's the people. It's the pioneering spirit that we have here that's part of everything and everybody sitting in this room today. We're part of that same fabric. We're the same people. We have chemists. We have a rocket scientist literally making wine. We have a dentist, and now we have a second one. We have lots of software engineers who have made a lot of money and are now coming into the wine business. And so we have this ecosystem of imagination and pushing the boundaries in what I call living in possibility. We've actually named a wine now Possibility, one of our newest wines, because I believe that represents all of us, not just our winery, but every person that drinks our wine. Because every day we're thinking about how do we take things to the next level, and our industry is part of that. So we really are becoming the new epicenter for wine in the world, and we really believe that. We're not going to hide that thought anymore. We're really going to start telling people about that because people are discovering it. We only planted our first Syrah in 1986. That's 32 years ago. And the 2 people, Mike Sauer and David Lake, that decided to do that had no idea whether it could work. You're making a 35-year decision with no clue. That is living in possibility. Today, we make some of the best Syrah in the world. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, every wine critic says that. The other thing I'd like to talk about is our camaraderie. We are not competitors. We're friends and neighbors. We work together, and I can tell you that the company that I believe has led that more than anybody is Chateau Saint Michel. In 2002, there was a massive freeze in eastern Washington, one of the worst in 15 years. I mean, 30% of the vines were destroyed. That means the next year, we were going to get no fruit. Here's the biggest dog in the industry, and they've got an opportunity to wipe out all their competitors. All their competitors are basically on their knees, done, toast. What did they do? They phoned, Ted Baser picked up the phone and phoned every winery and got all his senior people and said, if you need grapes, we'll sell them to you at our cost. True story. 2002. They kept the industry going. Who does that? I mean, how many other companies would do that? We all work together. We share equipment. We share ideas. We're very open about what we do. That is very unique. And if you look at industries around the world that have a high level of camaraderie, they normally do much better than industries that really are always going at each other and trying to destroy each other instead of looking outward. So let me tell you about some fun facts about wine. So corks versus screw caps. Huge controversy, okay? Well, I am a big cork fan. And I will tell you, it's a natural product. It's totally sustainable. And believe it or not, it imparts really good things to the wine. And we're learning now that there are things called corklands in wine that actually impart all sorts of amazing flavonoids and other things into wine and actually help wine. It does breathe. It's a breathable product. One of the big controversies about cork is, well, that means you've got to lie the wine down. I believe that, but there's now a new science saying that if you stand it up, it's going to do exactly the same thing. The problem with screw caps is not that they're excellent closures, but believe it or not, in the United States, if you're trying to sell a bottle of wine over $25 with a screw cap, you guys aren't going to buy them. That's what all our research says, and we've had friends that have moved to screw cap because sometimes a cork can have an issue where wines get corked from it. There's something that lives in cork called TCA, and it can almost get like a wet newspaper feel, which is terrible for all of us. But believe it or not, I believe cork is here to stay. And the cork people are getting better and better at that. So that's something about cork versus screw caps. There's also a lot of new types of synthetic products coming out made by, through sugarcane and other things, alternatives that I think will probably do a lot better than actually the screw cap business. Calories in wine. The only calories that wine contains come from the alcohol. Now that might sound very weird to all of you. Beer has a lot of calories because there's a lot of sugar in it. That bottle of wine there has 0.2 grams of sugar per liter. That's almost nothing. And so remember, it's great for you. I mean, so drink wine. The calories go right through your body. The latest study has just come out. That they did a big study on women, and they found that women that drink red wine are 10 pounds, weigh 10 pounds less than women that don't drink red wine. True story, by the way. I think that's great. We all know it's really good for our health. It lowers, it lowers cholesterol. It does all sorts of other wonderful things. So, wine is fantastic for you. And I've got to, if you haven't heard that, you're hearing that directly from me. Riper wines, so riper wines normally have higher alcohol contents, normally contain more sulfur dioxide. And that's because the relationship, remember, sulfur dioxide is needed. You need to put it in wine to protect the wine, right? It's a very powerful antioxidant. So is wine. Okay, and the tannins in wine. So when it's very ripe, the pH of the wine, okay, will be high, and therefore you have to add more of it. So if you are susceptible to sulfur dioxide, and some people say, well, why does red wine give me a headache? It's probably because you're drinking wines that are very ripe, that's got like a 15.5% alcohol percentage. Try red wines that are lower in alcohol and more fresh in their nature with higher acid, because they'll contain a lot less sulfur dioxide. So that's just a few interesting, fun facts about wine in general and why you should drink lots more of it. So what are some of the threats we're facing? Well, one of the threats we're facing in our business is labor. You can imagine, firstly, unfortunately, young American kids are not looking to step out of university, out of school, and go and pick grapes for us, or go and harvest apples, etc. So we really struggle with that. And of course, we've got all these wonderful Hispanic families living in Eastern Washington, and they are willing to work. They sort of set up their own co-ops, their own companies, and they move from crop to crop. But there's a very big push by the labor department over many years to change that, so that to try and move them into employee status and change the way we work together. They don't like it. I mean, I can tell you the people that have their own companies, and we don't like it, but it is really changing before our eyes and driving the cost of labor to a point where mechanization is becoming a real thing, where all of us are having to sort of move more towards mechanization, which is incredibly sad because that means less labor. So we're really hoping that's going to change. And we have, we're talking to a lot of people in Washington, D.C., and our delegation as well about the big issue that we have here. Distributors. The distributors are the real powerhouses in our industry. They're the billionaires. They're the people that fly around in the G5s. It's very hard being in a wine business. When you make wine, I mean, you plant a vineyard, you get I'm selling the first grapes to you, wine to you 7 years after that. Huge investments, long time, holding inventory. Distributor gets the wine today, sells it tomorrow, makes an incredible margin. They are consolidating at a huge rate. The big guys are buying the small guys, and it really is a huge threat to small wineries because we get locked out of that. And so that's something that we are acutely aware of in our business. Grocery stores are down double digits. 98% of wine gets sold in grocery stores. Just by the way, another fun fact, 98% of all wine that is bought in the United States is drunk on the same day it's bought. So, and isn't that interesting? I mean, because we go grocery shopping, we buy the food, we buy a bottle of wine, right? We all think we collect wine. My world is people sellers and that, but really, we're playing in the world of the 2%. So the grocery stores are down double digits, so people aren't walking the aisles. Well, the Amazon effect has a big impact, has that. The problem is that Amazon were going to get into the wine business and help us sell direct. They did that last year, and then they went and bought Whole Foods. Well, when they did that, they actually nixed themselves from being able to sell wine direct. And by the way, it was amazing to us that they did that. We said, did you know that you could do that? They figured it out, and they had to shut that division down. So we're not going to be part of the Amazon impact. They can't sell wine direct on our behalf. Huge. I mean, that's a big risk to the wine business. Foreign imports. Right now, and China specifically, believe it or not, China 10 years from now will be by far the biggest wine-growing region in the world. By far. I mean, they have, and the money that's going into at a centralized level is staggering. When we send a bottle of wine to China, the import tax is 25%. When they sell us a bottle of wine, the import tax is 10%. Interesting deal. When British Columbia, the Okanagan Valley, you all know about, when they sell us a bottle of wine, if let's say it's $20, it goes from $20 to $20.27. When we sell them a bottle at $20, it's $43.75. And we're not allowed to sell in grocery stores in BC. That's the law. So these are the sort of deals that we are faced with. Once again, I was pounding the pavements and the sidewalks of DC, literally last month, talking to Republicans, Democrats, anybody that listened to us about these trade deals that have happened many years ago that might not seem significant, but as China gets larger, it's become a massive, massive problem for us in these areas. The other thing is climate change. Everyone asks me about climate change. People talk about global warming. I'd rather talk about climate change because it's changing. It's not necessarily only warming. I mean, we go through warming patterns, we go through cooling patterns, we go through much drier patterns. What really concerns us as the industry is if the climate changes and temperature, it doesn't really matter if temperature goes up, but if temperature and humidity go up because of the changing patterns, that's a game changer. Because we have almost no humidity in Eastern Washington. If we started getting humidity, diseases that we have never have suddenly appear. Can you imagine? I mean, diseases that other wine regions have faced. If we get phylloxera here, that's 100, that is, basically 56,000 acres of wine grapes that we'll have to replant. It's hundreds of billions of dollars. So we are acutely aware, and that's what we worry about and what we think about. And we have this incredible institution at Wazoo. I would say that we now, certainly globally, the third best university in the world, and we think we could become, number one and number two in the world when it comes to enology and viticulture. And these are the things, that the scientists and people doing their PhDs and at master's level and even undergraduate level are studying for us so that we can understand, the impact on all of this. So the other thing I want to say to you is that, so how can you help? Well, you're part of this, and what's so wonderful is we love the fact, as Washington Wineries, about the fact that Washingtonians love the wines. They're really into the wines, but you can help even more. For instance, when you buy a bottle of wine or a case of wine, I always suggest a case is the way to go. I mean, if you buy a great bottle of wine, you get one, and then you drink it. It's like, man, it's just not a good thing. So really, at least minimum of 6 at a time. And you will never drink them over years and enjoy them, with your friends and family. But when you do that, buy them direct. It's the same price, but when a winery gets a bottle, remember when we get a bottle of wine that's sold, we sell direct, we get 100 cents in the dollar. When we sell it through a distributor, we get 50 cents in the dollar. That doesn't mean our profits shrink by 50%. They shrink by 90%. I often joke, another fun fact, because I'm trying to throw a few in, that when we sell, for instance, when we sell a bottle of wine to a distributor and then they sell it to a restaurant, the restaurant then marks it up by 2.5 to 3 times. That's the, and the very high-end guys mark it up even more. Well, if you calculate the economics of what we make on that bottle of wine, I mean we as an industry, and what the server makes as a tip, the tip of the server is more than the winery makes. That's unbelievable. I mean, that sort of does blow my mind. And I'm telling you, if you're interested, I could pencil it out for you. But those are the economics we're faced with. So buying direct from us is not, and I'm not talking just us. I'm talking about wineries in general. Get to know the wineries. Get to know the wineries you like. Get to know the people. We're living in the golden age of the wine business here in Washington State. You're drinking some of the best wines in the world. Cedar Creek, in the last 7 years, have had 5 top 100 wines. Only winery in the world to do that. In the last 2 years, our average score of our winery was 95.1 in 2015 and 96.2, average across all of our wines. We couldn't find 5 wineries in the world like that. Le Col, number 41, thank you. Le Col, number 41 from Walla Walla, that, Marty Clubb and his family. They 2 years ago entered one of their wines from the Ferguson vineyard that they'd only just planted 5 years before, and it won the best Bordeaux blend in the world in London. And I mean, it had to go through 7 different layers of judging to win that. That's incredible. I mean, everybody truly thought it had to be from Bordeaux, and yet it was from Washington. So all of us are living in this incredible age. Make sure when you go, enjoy the wines, but ask for them at restaurants. When you in New York or wherever you are around the country, say, I don't see you got that many Washington wines in the. Do you not know what's happening there? I mean, this is the new epicenter of wine in the world. I mean, you guys need to get with the program. And just give them hell in the way that we would do it, in the Pacific Northwest, because we're so nice, right? But we can do that. But I really think if we all do that and we go for it, we can do things. But thank you. What we want to thank you for, and I'm thanking on behalf of all of us, because when we travel around the country and around the world, and by the way, our little winery, we export to 15 countries in the world. How cool is that? I mean, I go to a winemaker dinner in Stockholm, and there's 40 people sitting in a restaurant waiting to hear. I'm going like, this is cool. I mean, that is, I have to pinch myself. It's easier to do a winemaker dinner for us in Stockholm than it is in New York. There's more competition for us in New York because every single winery on the planet wants to sell wine in New York. And I'm talking about, globally as well. Remember that, everybody, the French, the Italians, the Spanish, the Argentinians, I mean, the South Africans who are really making a go now of incredible wines. So, thank you for everything you do for us. And I want to just tell you a last quick story. Bridget and I, as Bill said, we left South Africa. We were allowed to take $75,000 each. And I'd built up, as you heard, a very large group of companies. I never had to work again. But we chose one country. There's only one country you can come to in the world to start again. There's only one country that if you wake up earlier than anybody else and you work hard and you get to know people, that you can make it. There's only one country in the world, where your kids can do whatever they want to do and dream big. And there's only one country in the world where organizations like this exist. And other organizations, look at the philanthropy in general, just in our city, and how many people raise all these things. I mean, this is incredible. And we're part of that. And I'm incredibly proud to be an American. We are living the American dream, my wife and I. We live in this winery. If I'd written 1,000 scenarios when we left South Africa, I could never imagine that we're running a winery in Washington State. By the way, which if you look at geographically speaking, is the furthest point from South Africa on the map of the earth. Not very good planning, but anyway, we do have direct flights into Europe and down. So thank all of you for being here. Keep on supporting our wines. We're going to try and make better and better wines for you, and we love to get to know all of you. Thank you so much.
Laura?
Thank you very much. Inspiring, delicious. I'm ready to go home and get that bottle of wine for tonight. I have a question about foreign investment in our wine business. What's happening with the French coming here, et cetera, et cetera? How is that affecting our local markets?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of investment in the sense that of, firstly, not only foreign, but also people from Napa Valley. This is the next frontier. In Napa Valley, if you want to buy prime 1 acre of land in Napa Valley, you're going to pay between $750,000 $1,001 million per acre. That means you got to sell a bottle of wine for $250 to break even. We can make the same wine here in Washington State for $75 or $80 and get the same score because the price of our land is a fraction. Right now, you can buy the best wine farms, I would say, per acre at about probably $100,000 to $120,000 an acre, but you can go all the way down to $50,000 an acre. So that's the driving force. So we've got a Spanish winery that's actually building, no one knows about yet, but they're building a winery in Walla Walla right now. We have a lot of, yes, people from all around the world looking at that, and I think that's a great point because you're going to see more and more people on a global basis coming in. But you already have Ernie Lewison, right, that's doing the Eroica project with Chateau Saint Michel. I mean, he is, the greatest Riesling winemaker in the world, and he makes it, in the Mosel, and he makes it in Washington. You've got the Antinori family, one of the most, probably the most famous Italian wine family on the planet, 17 generations that are, Col Solari. So we are seeing that, and I think it's going to have a very positive impact, as we move. And of course, little us, because we're originally from South Africa, so foreign investment.
Okay, Tom.
Steve, thank you for being here today, and thank you for this wonderful bottle of wine. I see it's rated at 97 points. Would you like to go to 100?
Tell me how.
Just spell Betz correctly.
Good job. Yeah, can you believe it? It's so funny that his last name is Betz, spelled differently, and he wins the first bottle of wine. And then, literally 2 doors down from the same table, so something was going on there with, I think it was rigged, but anyway.
Steve, thank you for your presentation. When are you going to open your tasting room to everybody, or are you?
Well, we're a little different because we only make 5,500 cases of wine, and we 21 years old. Our goal is to try and take wines to the next level, and sometimes that means even reducing, the amount of wine we make in a particular year. Direct to consumer is everything to us. 65% of our sales are direct. So that is, if we didn't have that, we couldn't do what we do. But because of that, we do have a 3-year wait list to get onto our list, and we only open the winery twice a year. The next is in a few weeks on the 8th, 9th, and 10th, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after Labor Day. We get 1,500 people coming to the winery on those weekends. So that's when we do it. But we also do, what we've done now, because so many people have asked us, is we do, when production allows it, we do by appointment only visits, but not in a tasting, because we don't have a tasting room. So we love to have you, if we can do it and we're not doing something, we'd love to have you and host you, and you probably even end up in our dining room at some point in time, because we're a family winery. So.
Your turn.
A two-part question. What would you recommend to a non-drinker for wine? First question. Second question is, I'm wondering about the diversity in wine ownership. I assume there are a lot of white guys, but what about women and people of color owners?
Yeah, actually, well, let me answer. Firstly, if you don't drink and it's because you don't you don't want to have alcohol in your system, then it is a problem because, people have tried to sort of make non-alcohol wines, etc. And I think I'd rather focus on other things. I think non-alcoholic beer, for instance, is a lot better than, non-alcoholic wine. But in terms of diversity, I think it's very exciting to see, what we're doing. But yeah, there's no question, we always need to have more diversity. But we've got a lot of women winemakers in Washington State, a lot. And Lisa Bear, had number 5 wine in the world just 3 years ago. Anna Schaefer from Armorice, I think she makes some of the best wine. You've got to taste her wines. They're some of the best wines in the state. I think her Viognier is by far the number 1 Viognier, in the state. So there's lots of people, like that. The other thing, I think we're the most inclusive wine-making region in the world by miles, by the way. And the reason I say that, if you want to get in the wine business in France, you have to be a billionaire. If you want to be a Napa Valley, you have to be a multi-billionaire because it's just so staggeringly expensive. If you want to start in the wine business in Washington, you start in the warehouse district in Woodinville. You can go, that's where Bob Betz started. Him and Kathy started in '97. They started in the wine warehouse. The Mark Ryan winery started in the warehouse. Anna Schaefer started in the warehouse. Lisa Bear is still in a warehouse. So so this is for anybody. You can start with, you can lease a small spot, you can borrow equipment from other people, we'll all help you, and you can get going. You just got to buy some grapes and know what you're doing. You can go through, you can go to college through Wazoo and do the program, a 2-year enology and 2-year viticulture program, their certificate program, for not hundreds of thousands, for maybe $10,000, and you can really know what you're doing. So you've got an ecosystem here that is not surpassed in the world. This is the only place in the world where we have this whole urban. We've got 120 wineries in an urban environment away from the vineyards here. So that's also a reflection, I think, of who we are as a community and the way that we are so entrepreneurial. But yes, we always want to be more diverse. We want to be more inclusive, and that's very important. Last question.
A question wearing your hat on the commission. You mentioned New York. If you go to New York, they proudly tout Oregon Pinot or Argentinian Malbec. When you're marketing the state of Washington, if you've got, we've got Cabernet, we got this, we got all these different things, and the message gets diluted. So as a commission, can you hang your hat on one thing and build the reputation of the state that way?
Yeah, so the real question is, are we focused enough? Okay, in other words, I think that's where you were coming from, right? So when you say Oregon, you go Pinot Noir. When you go, exactly. When you go Napa Valley, you go Cabernet Sauvignon. So the problem is, so yes, we've had huge debates about that, but we really feel that we want to talk. So where we're moving to is talking about the people, the character, the innovative sense of what we're doing, and why these wines are so different, because everyone talks about soil and terroir and all that sort of stuff. We're not ready to declare a winner right now, because the problem is we get as many 100-point scores for Syrah as we do for Cabernet. So which one would we edge out? But for me, there's no question, because I ask this question at the commission all the time, because I'm also the head of the marketing committee. If you're going to take one bottle of wine, that's all you can take, what is that bottle going to be? If you go to France, to really highlight Washington, well, the first thing we all know is it's going to be red, not white. And that's not knocking the whites, but you would lead with the red. And it will definitely be either Cabernet or Syrah. So once again, we're not going to move away from those other varieties. What we're going to do is lead with those varieties. And so you'll see more of that coming. But we think that diversity is very, very important for us to continue. I mean, remember that we're the biggest. I mean, Chateau Saint Michel is the largest seller of Riesling in the world. So we couldn't nix Riesling. It's a very. But what you've just raised is probably one of the greatest conundrums facing Washington in terms of how we explain who we are. Because remember that even when we go to New York, people think when we say Washington, they go, which side of the Potomac? You go like, guys, there's a state in the West. They go, there is a state in the West Coast called, well, I mean, sorry. But, they really are not that, we think they are, but they understand Bordeaux's and Burgundies, believe it or not, even more than Oregon. So that's fine. But we think we can do it through who we are as human beings, and the fact that we live in this possibility and people are attracted by who we are versus all those other things. Great question. I think, can we have one last one?
Yes.
Thanks again for being here today. Tom joked about the rating system, but if you could take just maybe 2 minutes and help explain. It seems like it's gotten to the point where it's like the grading curve in Lake Wobegon. It's everyone's above average. Can you comment on scoring in the wine industry and the politics behind that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question there's been inflation, let's say, but listen, I mean, you go and look at how many, and maybe in Washington you see a lot of wine. When you see wines that are starting to get 94 above, there are very few in the world really, but those are the ones you read about, because the other ones don't, I mean, on most of the grocery shelves are not even going to get ratings or don't even put their wines in because they don't want to get a 75 or an 80. But quite simply, the critics, we live and die by them. I mean, in our world, if we don't get high scores, it really hurts us. Everyone 10 years ago said, that's going to change. I mean, 10 years from now, 10 years ago, it'll be the community. But believe it or not, no one trusts the community. because there's bots and there's this, and every rating system now seems to be contaminated by by manipulation. So people, it's really sad. So the critics are still very powerful. Robert Parker is by far the organization, because remember, he doesn't really rate the wine. He is by far the most powerful critic, and I just don't see that going away. There are others: Jeb Dunnick, James Suckling, Stephen Tanzer, and then you get Wine Spectator, who are much more, they could be a little more political maybe, in terms of, if you place advertising, etc., but the others don't take advertising. So regardless of whether we like it or not, we live by that. And you cannot ever cross a line. I mean, you can't try and manipulate them in any way, because if you do that, they won't come to your winery. We're very lucky in the sense that, there's nearly 1,000 wineries. We're one of the very few that they actually come to visit to taste, and then they go and taste them blind. They only visit a handful, but that's taken us, many, many years to do. I don't believe it's ever going to change. Okay, one more question.
Push the button. Is that better? So I'll take the last question. Thanks, Steve. This has been great. Believe it or not everybody drinks wine. I do, but for those that don't, but want to support the Washington wine industry, what's the best way to gift wine, especially when you're not sure what you're buying? Is there an easy way for us to please someone else with a quick bottle of wine that...
Yeah, because that's another great way of, exactly, when you're gifting, use a bottle of Washington wine. For me, the easiest way to do it is to go with a small producer. So many people, if you go into Woodinville as an example, or to Walla Walla, just to name two areas, of the country, you really can't go wrong with if people aren't making great wines, they're not going to be in business for very long. And, get to know the winemaker and the people, and then tell that story, because that's a very cool thing. But you're not going to ever embarrass yourself if you go and get it from a small producer in general, because they put in their life, they put in their hearts and souls into this. And of course, there are exceptions to that, because I don't want to knock, Chateau San Michel, their Col Solari wine, for instance, is phenomenal, and they make it on a small batch basis. That would be another one. But for me, try and, this is a time in history where you can get to know the owners and the winemakers. We're all still totally involved. This is like Napa Valley 25 years ago. We are the proprietors. We take the trash down, just so you know, on a Friday. I've run 2 public companies in my life. I now take the trash out on a Friday. I drive a forklift. You've got to be pretty passionate about what you do to do that, okay? My mother thinks I'm completely mad. You lost the plot, but... So please get to know us, and that's the way, and then tell the story of that winery. I think that's what we're looking for. Thank you so much.